Welcome to the Anything and Nothing podcast, where we talk about a little bit of anything and a whole lot of nothing. Today, I am joined by Brendan Hinton. He is, some know him as Beanie. He's an Army vet, a former Postal Service SDO, and the co-chair of the Kershaw County Housing Authority. He's also the owner of Earthly Eating, and he's a man that's building something new for the community. So let's get straight into it. Welcome, Brendan.
Hey, for sure. Thank you for having me, Rob. For sure.
Appreciate you coming, man.
No doubt.
So we'll get straight into it, man. Again, like I say, it's just a regular conversation. But how you doing, man?
Man, I'm good. I'm good, man. It's just a new day in the county, man. I've been working at what I've been working at for a long time now, about 4 or 5 years. Been doing a lot of things. So, just trying to give my gift back to the community. That's all.
Okay, cool. So before we get into kind of what you're doing, let's just get to know you a little bit, man. Where are you from originally?
Hey, I'm originally from Stamford, Connecticut, born there. Came down here, graduated from Camden High, class of 01, 25 years out of high school this year. Who would imagine?
Yeah.
But yeah, right here in Camden, like you said, I'm an Army vet. Went to the Army straight out of high school.
What caused you to go to the Army? What caused that decision?
Well, that's the thing, this is the reason why I'm doing what I'm doing now. I had 2 drug addicted parents. Pops was in and out of jail my whole life, basically. And I just wanted to do something better with my life. So I just figured, hey, let me go ahead out here, go do something to guarantee that I can have a better future for myself. So
yeah.
That's what prompted me to go to the military.
Thank you for your service, man. Appreciate that.
Not a problem. Yeah.
Okay. So how was that? Like, where were you stationed and that kind of stuff?
So I did my basic in AIT at Fort Sill, Oklahoma, artillery. You know what I'm saying? And I went to Fort Lee to the Quartermaster Battalion. So I've been all over. I've been to Fort Bragg, North Carolina. Been to Fort Bliss, Texas.
Okay.
Been in Djibouti, Africa. So been got my feet wet a little bit.
Okay. Where I know you say you're from Connecticut. Where'd you grow up? Did you grow up there? Or did you grow up around here?
Well, again, with my parents and my family down here, having the problems we had, growing up kind of in the hood down here in the racetracks.
Yeah.
My grandmother would bring us back and forth from here to South Carolina to Stamford, Connecticut every summer just to give us a little game and give us a little, what you want to say, relaxation from the hood life. So yeah, that's kind of how we did that.
Okay. Where'd the nickname Beanie come from?
You know what? That's crazy. That's a good question too, because back in the 80s, early 80s, there was a cartoon that used to come on, and it was a witch with a cauldron, and she would stir her cauldron up and say beanie weenie chili weenie. And again, you got to be over 45 to at least know that cartoon. So my grandma kind of gave it to me and it stuck. So it kind of stuck with me.
That's funny, dude. So basically, life after the uniform. I'm not real familiar with the Postal Service, and what does SDO mean? What's that about?
SDO is Supervisor of Distribution Operations.
Okay.
And for me, it was a real bittersweet moment because I was one of the youngest and first African American SDOs in the Greater South District of South Carolina. So
cool.
Once I got to the Postal Service, I kind of just worked my ass off. You feel me?
Yeah.
And one of my managers gave me the opportunity, and he was like, "Hey, I'm gonna put you on." So before I even became a regular employee for the Postal Service, I became an acting SDO, and then as time progressed, and of course, you pay your dues, and then I got to get my shot. So I got my shot, and I took it all the way there.
That's awesome, man.
Cool,
So
cool.
Is that kind of what got you into leadership in general, or because I know you're doing a lot of the public leadership type things?
Yeah, that probably was one of my first things I would say as far as like being an executive stature.
Yeah.
So being that, just handling people. Always been a manager. You know what I'm saying? I've been working in restaurants because I'm a 92 golf as far as the Army is concerned. So that's a food service specialist. So once I got out of food service in the Army, I went to Johnson and Wales, got kicked out. You know what I'm saying? I only went in a semester, got kicked out of Johnson and Wales, came back to Camden, met up with my guys at the Crescent Grill. Shout out to Kyle Taylor. Shout out to Jamie Hecker.
Okay.
Shout out to Mark. Mark still owns and operates the Mill Pond Steakhouse. And they gave me an opportunity. So, I just continued my craft from there.
Yeah, cool. What caused you to get kicked out?
Man, listen,
Wild
bro.
times.
Again, yeah, I'm like I said, man, I keep it real with everybody. I'm one of them guys from the hood. You know, I'm in school smoking weed, you know, drinking, having parties.
Yeah.
You know, so that's what I did. And I'm still kind of known as the life of the party everywhere
Yeah.
I go,
Yeah.
even though I kind of want to take a more serious approach to things
Right.
now that I've grown of age. You feel me? So
Yeah.
yeah, that's kind of what happened with me.
Yeah, I don't think your past necessarily has to shape your future.
Absolutely.
Especially if you learn from it. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
I had a similar track. I'm sure you know.
Yeah, you know how it is. You know, and we are what we are. You know, we're products of our environment.
Yeah.
And like I said, you know, I had to grow through, you know, family members, mothers, fathers, you know, uncles and aunts, you know, drug use, you know, like we saw about the racetracks back in the 90s. You know, the racetracks in the 90s was something that, you know, everybody who know, if you know, you know,
Yeah.
it was big drug dealers,
Yeah.
a lot of things going on. And, you know, for me, I just didn't want to fall victim to that environment. So, you know, I did all I could. I wasn't a scholar
Yeah.
by any means, but I also made sure, you know, I made good grades and I made sure I graduated,
Right.
you know, so I did the things I needed to do in order to push through. So, you know, that's how that went.
That's what's up, man. The tracks definitely had a reputation back in the day
Absolutely.
as we were growing up. What advice would you give anybody in a similar situation that wants to kind of change their situation?
And that's the biggest thing ever, you know, you got to push through. But one thing about me, I knew that I didn't want to fall victim to the same things that I saw my family members and,
Right.
you know, my close family fall victim to. And so my greatest advice is just, you know, make your mind up, you know what you want to do what you want to do.
Right.
So that's the biggest thing I would say.
Yeah. Determine your path and then
Absolutely.
set a plan and get it.
Yeah,
get it happening.
man. Because it's so easy. You know, I'll tell you a quick story, which would, you know, finally got me to see that I was on a different path. I had a girlfriend. I won't mention her name because some of us know her. We went to school with her.
Yeah.
And, you know, she was working at a strip club. And me and my friends and my cousin and I, shout out to young Lionel, we were going to the strip club to go see her work. And this was the 2007
Yeah.
era. So it was big baggy jeans, big
Yeah,
white
yeah.
tees. And here I am dressed like Carlton Banks.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? I had on the light blue polo with the yellow khakis. And it was a burglary in our neighborhood. So the cops came and got us,
Yeah.
wrapped us all up in the tripwire. And then it was like, hey, you know, well, I think we should let these guys go because I don't think this guy fits the description. So that's when I knew, you know, I had to set myself apart from other folks. I had to be myself, and I've always been myself. So that's how I knew, you know, from that point on, I was like, yeah, you know, I need to set myself apart from others and do what I like to do. And of course, not just what I like to do, but do what I know what's necessary in order for me to succeed.
Yeah. Did you have to change your circle at all to kind of achieve that?
You know what? I didn't have to, you know.
They kind of elevated with you.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, you know, some of them had, and again, you know, shout out to my boy P. P had to go down, and he had to do, you know, a prison bid.
Yeah.
And so during that time, I actually felt what they call survivor's remorse because he and all the rest of my homeboys went to prison. They did time, and I was the only one who didn't
Right.
go. So I actually had survivor's remorse for a minute.
Yeah.
And I was like, well, dang, when, you know, everybody else went, why didn't I go?
I feel you. I know how that feels.
Yeah. But at the end of the day, you know, they still show love. It was never nothing different. And
Yeah.
of course, you know, them knowing who I am at the core was never nothing I had to fight.
Yeah, so you always kind of dress a little different than
Absolutely. I always kept my swag on.
Yeah,
you know,
yeah.
I always did what I had to do, whether it was a little jewelry, little whatever. So yeah, we did that
yeah,
for sure.
Yeah, that's what's up. Yeah, I know. When we played golf, I was impressed with how you
Absolutely.
how you
See what
showed
I
up.
mean? You know, and that's the thing, you know, you gotta have, you know, your own, you know, and that's the thing about it. You know, a lot of kids, and that's why we're talking about what we're talking about today. A lot of kids are just following the trends
Yeah.
or following what their friends say instead of going out, using their own mind and thinking, hey, you know, I really, really like to do this. Let me do this instead of doing what these others are doing.
100%.
So that was me. That was me. I always wanted to push the boundaries, or whether it was what I was wearing, what I was dressed like,
Yeah.
or whether if it was just me thinking and going to school.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was it.
I feel you there, man. I'm not doing so much real estate anymore, but when I was in real estate, I was always wearing 3-piece suits and stuff like that because
Yeah.
it was something I'd always wanted to do, and I felt a little weird doing it at first, but then it became normal. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, and that's just how people knew me, is like the guy in the 3-piece suit. But you know, I got to break those back out, man. I miss wearing my suits.
Hey, I get it. And I found myself as I climbed the ladder in the corporate world, that's the other thing too. I found myself wanting to go back to being simplistic.
Yeah.
I found myself wanting to be more and more, I guess for lack of better words, comfortable.
Yeah.
And being comfortable in myself. So I had plenty of, altercations with management where they was like, hey, Brendan, you might need to wear a button down shirt or a shirt with a collar.
Yeah. Man,
And
please.
and another story real quick, we had the George Floyd march down here in Kershaw County. Myself, Franklin Alexander, shout out to Franklin, and we got a call from a city councilman at the time, and actually a mayor at the time, and he gave me a call and he said, "Hey, do you know what's going on with this George Floyd march?" And I was like, "Well, I don't know, but I'll figure it out." And so when I got on the phone with Franklin, I was like, "Well, Frank, if I got to do a night in the box to make sure everybody get their voice heard, I'll do it."
Yeah.
And so we went down. We'll give a shout out to Sheriff Bone. He welcomed us in. He said, "Hey, you want to lead this thing? Let's lead it." We did the march. Afterward, we had a series of different meetings with different people. And so after that happened, I found myself wanting to be more and more myself. But I happened to find that a lot of folks were like, "Hey, if you want to be a black male and you want to put yourself in these higher positions, maybe you want to cut your hair, or maybe you want to put a collar on." And I was like, "Well, why would I do that? When
Yeah.
the people that I'm targeting look like me."
Yeah.
So I want to make sure that they're comfortable and they know that what I'm saying comes from a real place. So, as you see now, it's all full circle.
Yeah. That sounds kind of like something. What was his name? Charleston White, I think is his name.
Yeah.
He was saying
said
something
that.
similar.
Yeah.
Yeah, because he was like, "Hey, I used to wear polos and button ups and stuff like that, but nobody listened to me."
Absolutely.
So maybe that kind of resonates. What does being a part of the Kershaw County Housing Authority mean? What's that work look like?
Ooh, well, that work was a lot of work. Around COVID time, we got a good chunk of funding from the federal government. And what that allowed us to do was to go around. We did roofing projects. We did windows.
Yeah.
We built ramps on folks' homes that were handicapped or had special needs. And we also paid some bills, So again, a lot of people around COVID time, they lost their jobs, lost hours. So
Yeah.
we were able to, pay some bills and put people back on their feet while they were waiting for, everything to open up and get their jobs back.
Oh, that's cool.
As of right now, what we did is we kind of resolved all our funding. And we gave it to Food for the Soul.
Okay.
And so what Food for the Soul did with it was they expanded the homeless shelter, which I'm very proud of because, again, as we know, us that stay here in Kershaw County and Camden, when you ride downtown, especially when we had the hotels open down there across from the gas station and whatnot, we saw a lot of homeless population. We saw a lot of people who were addicted to drugs or whatnot, and they had nowhere to go. So just give Food for the Soul, and I gave a lot of shout out to Tina Stokes Griggs, for doing her thing at Food for the Soul, continuing to.
What are your thoughts on how we as a society deal with like drug usage and addiction? Like how can we solve that problem?
Well, one thing about it is, and I hate to sound like this, but if you watch Scarface, you're never gonna get rid of drugs.
Yeah.
Everybody's gonna use them. But one thing that I learned growing up is from my mother, it's not what you do, it's how you do it.
Yeah.
So it's like the thing that I give big kudos to the Kershaw County Sheriff Department is because they have intervention councils. So therefore, if someone has a mental illness or someone has a drug addiction, instead of just locking them up and just throwing away the key and, hey, I'll forget about that guy, we don't care nothing about him. They can offer them some help.
Yeah.
They can offer them a little assistance to trying to get them clean, or either just if you got a mental illness, hey, well, let's talk about what's going on. Why are you acting out, and just just before you lock them up, let's figure out what we can do to help
Right.
before we just put them away. Because as we all know, just putting somebody in prison don't solve their problem.
Yeah, that typically
what I'm
makes it
saying?
worse.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Because, jail is like college for criminals.
Yep.
You know what I'm saying? A lot of people don't understand that. Jail is college for criminals. So it's like, give them some help. You know, and in our society, we forget that.
Yeah.
So, we definitely have to look into helping folks more, making sure that they have the things that they need in order to be more successful.
Yeah, for sure. I think that's actually kind of my thoughts on it too. Is especially with drug use. I mean, I've got a weird take on crime in general. I think we're too harsh on victimless crimes.
Facts.
I think that a lot of our jail system is we turn out we take people that have victimless crimes and incarcerate them, and then they become hardened criminals and then come out and then they start having those victim crimes.
That's fact. That's fact. So I used to work for the Kershaw County United Way of Kershaw County. So I was an HMIS coordinator. Okay. So HMIS is Homeless Management Information System.
Yeah.
So what we would do is a lot of those guys that you would see downtown didn't have anywhere to go. If they needed help with bills or they needed a hotel room to stay for the week or weekend, we would process them, put them in the system. That way we could keep a track of how many times they've been in, how many times they asked for help, what were their things that they were having going wrong.
Yeah.
And then also from there, what you do is you can help them as far as just because a lot of them don't even have Social Security cards.
Yeah.
A lot of them don't know where they were born.
Right.
A lot of them don't even know that basic information. So, having those intake situations in place helped a lot of folks.
Yeah, for sure. That's something I want to get into whenever I, get to the point where I can start to invest money in that type of thing. I want to figure out a way to help with rehabilitation. Because I've suffered, I've had addiction as well. I was an alcoholic for a little while.
Man, I think we all were.
Thankfully, I was a functioning alcoholic.
Fact. That's a big fact. We all were, babe. I feel you on that one.
Yeah, but it did have severe negative impacts on my life for sure. And, I've got I passed it. We'll talk about more off camera for sure.
Yeah, for sure.
But, it's just some of the things that I did and saw in my, late teens, early 20s. That's kind of shaping the path of what I want to do, as I start to accumulate more wealth and become more, financially independent from the system. So
yeah, and the big thing about that is man, that's really what goes down, and that's kind of what, I'm not gonna say what makes me upset, but as a lot of our people, especially African Americans, a lot of times when we get up, we tend to say, oh well, we can't go back down there because we just came from there, or we don't want to backslide. When it's less about pulling up, it's more about getting pulled back down.
Yeah.
And, and to me, that's just the wrong message. Because it's like, someone had to mentor you. Mm-hmm. Someone had to help you. Someone had to give you advice. And for me, being a guy who father was in prison my whole life, my father was dead in a chimney for 5 years,
man,
before somebody found him.
Wow.
So it's like for me to have have other folks that I didn't know to mentor me and give me the advice. Man, reach back and pull somebody back up. Don't worry about somebody pulling you down. Yeah. Because if you're in the right state of mind, you're in the right space, you'll make sure that you good and you secure.
Yeah.
So, that's what that's kind of the thing that I don't like in our community.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. I think, like when I started my businesses, the very first business I started, I was kind of centric around just the money aspect of it. You know what I mean? And, I've had started and ended up several businesses that failed. I started around the pandemic with a 3D print company, and it did all right. And then, it kind of fell apart.
Yeah.
But I really started to see the best success when I started to implement the principle of how can I help others? How can I bring people along with me and that kind of thing? And the reason why, I bring people on the podcast and I start hanging out with people like you because I feel like I want to surround myself with like-minded individuals that have drive and have are trying to do things with life. Yeah. So that's part of the reason why I like hanging out with you and everything. Yeah. But so you've also started Earthly eating. What's that about?
So Earthly Eating, that was my first business venture was in 2006. I know that seems eons ago. You feel me? But yeah, I had a business mind ever since then. Not only did I start Earthly Eating, I started, which is the namesake is alike. I started the Track Block Killer Incorporated, which was my record label back in the day.
Okay,
So I wanted to be a rapper too. I wanted to be a rapper. I wanted to entertain. Yes, I did. So yeah, so back then, it was about catering. Again, like I said, I was a 92 Golf. Jumped out of helicopters, fed the soldiers.
Yeah.
So I wanted to bring my catering and my chef expertise back to the streets and do my own thing. So, me and a friend of mine, we started Earthly Eating Catering, and shortly thereafter he went to prison. So I was left on my own I went left on my own to run the business solo. And shout out to God.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? I was able to keep it going and just had a whirlwind of success, man. Just, people never stop supporting, people never stop wanting to know. And then, just good thing that I took my time and learned my craft, and I was just able to give the people what they wanted.
Yeah. What's the basis of Earthly Eating? Is it like is there some type of, is it like soul food or?
Well, yeah. So for me now, if a lot of people don't know about my weight loss journey, I was about 290 at one point in time. So I was about 290, fat and happy.
Yeah.
So yeah, but what I did was I learned how to make, I've already knew how to be a chef, so I learned how to make foods cleaner.
Mm-hmm.
Learn how to use less, what you want to say, additives or stuff like that, and just to make it taste good. So a lot of my stuff that I do is vegan. I haven't eaten pork. I don't eat fast food, and that was since like 2004.
Yeah.
So anything that you pick up out a window, I don't eat. Pork, I don't eat. You get me with chicken and beef and veggies and fruits, and that's about it.
Yeah.
So with Earthly Eating, I give them those options, and also I call myself a custom caterer. So also, even if you weren't too much into the, I don't worry about it, I want to eat my bacon and I want to eat my ham, custom caterer to me meant, hey, whatever you want, I can make it because I've been trained. So I know how to do it. So yeah. So
how long did it take you to lose the weight?
You know what? I was consistently in the gym every day for about 2.5 years.
Right.
Consistently fasting. I fasted. My fasting routine goes from 8 o'clock at night, I stop eating. Then at noon the next day, I would eat again. But of course, when I would start to eat again, my first meal would be like veggies, fruits and veggies and water.
Right.
And then my dinner would be high protein, a little bit of good carbs, a little bit of good fat. So I've been, looking on getting my ISSA certification and, NSM certification, stuff like that. So I can, show others. But that's what I started in, about 2.5 years. Here I am now at a good 206, 205 on a good day. So
that's what's up, man.
So that's what the basis of that was.
You may not know this, man, but September of last year I was 350 pounds.
Wow.
I'm down to last time I jumped on the scale I was 222.
See, that's a good thing, man. And again, that's good water, that's good exercise.
Yeah, right.
And a lot of people don't understand, man. You don't want to just I see GLP-1 on the board. A lot of people don't understand, man. When you go to lose weight, man, you definitely have to incorporate some type of weightlifting in it.
Yeah.
Because you don't want to let this fat melt off and then you have saggy skin.
100%. Part of the problem is muscle burns more fat, more calories than anything, like that's being active. And I was going to ask you how you felt about peptides. And GLP-1 is just a peptide. I'm not sure what you know about peptides.
Yeah. Well, I don't know much about them, but I know that there's good ones and there's bad ones.
Yeah.
So again, if it's good, it's good.
Yeah.
But I will, veer off again, and I would say, just stay active. You know what I'm saying?
For sure.
Stay active, and then incorporate your vitamins and incorporate your proteins and your good stuff with it. And because again, that's just the main thing. We have to know, like I said earlier, it's not what you do, it's how you do it.
Right.
So
Dude,
you got to know.
check out the book. I'll send you. I'll get you a copy of it. But there's a
for
book I
sure.
read called "Burn the Fat, Feed the Muscle" by Tom Venuto.
For sure. Yeah.
That's basically how I developed my diet technique, and it involves intermittent fasting and things of that nature.
Yeah.
But the biggest thing that I found that helps me out, you start at a baseline with your carbohydrates, your proteins, and your fats. For me, you start at 40, 40, 20, basically. And then you measure your progress along the way, right? Like,
Absolutely.
So if you start at 40, 40, 20, and you see body fat percentage, your body fat weight, you got to track your weight and your body fat percentage.
Yeah.
And then if your body fat weight is going up instead of down, you got to lower your carbohydrates. Try
Absolutely.
35 and then
Yeah.
add that to the proteins. You know what I mean? And you just continue to tweak the diet until you start to see the lean body fat weight go up.
That's perfect, because what happens is, again, especially in my community, a lot of people just have that don't care attitude.
Yeah, right.
I'm hungry. I'm gonna eat what I want.
That's right. Yep.
I ain't worrying about what I'm ready to eat this, or like we say again, with my time working with, the Housing Authority, Food for the Soul, and with the United Way, we found out that Kershaw County is almost an 80% food desert.
Yeah.
So when you get outside the city of Camden, when you start to go into Cassett, and back down to Bethune, or when you go to Elgin, you got food deserts. And food deserts don't necessarily mean that there's no food available.
Yeah.
What it means is that you're talking about your grocery stores that keep your essential veggies and fruits. Now you're going into, we have so many fast food restaurants.
Right.
So many places where you can get bags of chips and sodas and sweet juices from. So even those places are considered food deserts.
Yeah.
So when you get into those places, and of course, coming from where I come from, where we come from, you don't have a lot of options when you don't have a lot of money.
Yeah.
So it's like, hey, we got to go to McDonald's today and get this 2 for, or we got to go to Wendy's today and get this 4 for 4.
Yeah, that's right.
You know what I'm saying? So when you got to get this 4 for 4 to feed the family, it's not necessarily the best thing to eat, but it's what you got that's available.
Yeah, that's a good point, man. I never thought of that as far as like the access to the healthy foods. Because I mean, I do disagree with folks when they say healthy food is more expensive than the processed food, because it's really not.
Yeah, it's not.
But I think a big part of why a lot of people don't actually diet, exercise is just laziness, man. You just
it's definitely laziness, man. It's definitely laziness.
But I think a big part of why people don't diet is just the time it takes to meal prep and things like that. So that's why companies like Factor and, I mean, maybe that would be a path for Earthly Eating at some point where you could.
Oh, absolutely.
Because I mean, if for me, I don't like meal prepping, but I do it. I do it because I know it works. I pre-measure my portions. I know exactly how much I'm eating, and I actually have an app I'm gonna show you after this, man, that you might like. I gamify my life. It's something I do. I make apps. I make websites. I do that kind of stuff. So that's what I'm into now.
Yeah, in fact, same thing with me, man. I got an app too. I make sure I follow it, weigh myself every day, show my body fat and all that type of stuff too. But also, to get back to it, it's not the fact that it's hard to eat healthy. It's the fact that people don't want to do it.
Yeah.
Why would I sit down and just eat a chicken breast and some broccoli?
Yeah.
When I can have fried chicken.
Right. Yeah.
And macaroni and cheese.
Yeah.
So that's the thing. People want what they want.
Yeah.
And instead of, being disciplined and eating what's right, they'll rather just take what they want.
And we're in a society now of instant gratification.
It's the microwave era.
Yeah.
It's the microwave era for sure.
And then not just that, man. It's people that want to lose weight or say they want to lose weight with their words but not their actions. They don't do it because they don't get that instant gratification from eating that meal. Like okay, I've ate clean for 2 weeks now and I still look the same. Okay, It takes time, man.
It takes time, man.
It's the same amount of time it took you to get the 350 pounds is the same amount of time it's going to take you to cut the weight off.
It took me 2.5 years of straight in the gym every day, running. Like I ran this morning. I'm doing 9-minute miles at 44 years old.
That's
a lot of people ain't doing that. But that's because of me and my mental health, where I want to go, where I'm trying to be, and where I want to stay at.
Yeah. What type of exercise are you doing?
Man, listen, I do weight training at least 5 days a week, and I'm doing cardio at least 4 days a week. So, of course, and you got to give your body time to heal. You got to give your body time to recover. But again, at least 5 days, and 5 days, if not, I'm running I'm running running up and down these hills.
Yeah.
I'm doing a mile. We're about to have a 5K around the corner next month. You know, I'm planning on getting in that, doing the 5K. And I can run a 5K in about 33, 32 minutes. So again, you know, but again, I'm not just saying that to brag. I'm saying that because I've worked to that. I worked to that point, like you said. You know, you're not going to just jump out of bed and just run a 5K if you hadn't practiced or if you hadn't ran a few miles before.
Yeah,
so
for
you know, I've worked myself up to that. So yeah.
Yeah, when this is the second time I've lost a significant amount of weight. So, you know, in my teenage years, I was obese. I was obese from basically not, I won't say birth. And I can get into kind of my backstory of what caused the obesity and everything like that. But in my late teens, early 20s was the first time I lost the most weight. And, you know, I started with just running. That was all I did.
Yeah.
You know, you got to start somewhere. But I was skinny fat, man. You know, and it's because I didn't have the resistance training. I didn't have the diet correct. And then that's kind of what got me into burn the fat, feed the muscle. And I learned about high intensity interval training. So you might not even know it, but man, but like the hill sprints and stuff like that, that's like
that works,
bro.
That works.
That's that high intensity interval training.
Absolutely.
And the Tom Venuto goes in that in the book, but I did Insanity in my 20s.
Got you. Well, I did Insanity in my 20s too. It was called Basic Training. But even before that, you know, Camden High School, you know, football program. You know, I played football. I wrestled. I ran track. You know, so I always was active. And again, to go back to that was just a means for me not to be in the street so much.
For sure, yeah.
But then as I got
it was an outlet.
Yeah, it was an outlet. So then as I got the basic training, you know, I'm in one of the worst platoons in Fort Sill, Oklahoma. So we get smoked every day. And if you Army guy, you know what smoke means. We doing push-ups, we doing sit-ups.
Yeah.
You know, that's what it is. Push-up, sit-up improvement. On Tuesdays and Thursdays, you're running 2 miles Monday, Wednesday, and Friday.
Did you when you went into the Army, were you overweight or were you already?
Yes, I definitely was. Because I thought I was in shape from the workouts in high school, but when I got there, you know, I came home. I think I left at probably about 240, and I came back home. I was 185. My mama was crying like, "Oh my God, they ain't feeding my baby."
Yeah. That's the funny thing about it too, man. Like parents. Typically, they are the worst at supporting folks on health journeys. You know what I mean? And I actually had in my late teens, early 20s, I had to have a blunt conversation with my parents about like, stop saying I'm starving myself. Like I'm not starving myself. I'm trying to make myself better. You know what I mean?
You know, and I ain't gonna get to that now. I know we'll get to it a little bit later, but you know, that's another thing that I know a lot of people ain't gonna like me saying. But it's like, you know, we're in a world now where there's a lot of fatherless homes, especially in my community. And so like a lot of mothers, what they find themselves doing is compensating for the loss. So, I'll give my child or I'll give my son or my daughter whatever they want,
right? Because
they're not getting this or they're lacking this. And all we find out it is that there's enabling them to be more stubborn, to be more lazy. Yeah. And like you said, ultimately to be more overweight or whatever the case may be.
Yeah, it's reinforcing that negative behavior of that self-gratification.
Absolutely.
Because I firmly believe that the food manufacturing companies and the folks in power that actually put that stuff on the shelves, they're trying to kill us.
And not only trying to kill us, they know what we like. Yeah. We have a hypothalamus. We have parts of our brains where, you know, when you eat something good, you're going to know it's good. You're going to want to keep wanting it. So, you know, they know that.
Yeah,
so
they've got it down to a formula, man.
Absolutely.
Like, they know exactly how much sugar, salt, that type of stuff to put into the foods to make it to where it's addictive for us.
You look on the back of a label, if it says various chemicals or various nutrients or chemicals, just know they say various because they don't want to name all those dangerous things that they didn't test for.
Yeah,
so
for sure.
Just remember.
Yeah, and the first time I lost all the weight, I kept my diet simple because I hadn't read the book yet. But I just told myself, if God didn't create it, I'm not going to eat it. You know
Absolutely.
what I mean?
That's right. That's right.
Simplified the ingredients a bit.
That's right.
So what's your family dynamic look like now? I know you talked a bit about like when you were growing up.
Yeah.
How's it look now?
Well, you know, what I tried to do with myself is, man, just like everyone else, man, I got 3 beautiful children. I got a stepson that's out in Fort Bliss, Texas right now. I got my daughter. She's a beautiful young lady, senior in high school, and my son, intelligent, and he has autism. And he's in the 11th grade. He's a
Yeah.
junior in high school. And so even though their mother and I didn't make it, I'm a very, very active dad.
That's good.
I'm in their life every day, doing the best I can to make that happen. And of course, like I said, even though what I went through, mother and father, on and off drugs and out of prison, I still try to not make that a theme that they have. So
Yeah.
so yeah, that's my dynamic now, right? But my kids, they love me, and again, they're teenagers. So
Yeah.
again, at these teenage years, you got to be really, really clear, and you got to be really, really, you got to know what you're doing with them at all times.
Yeah, for
'Cause
sure.
they're taking everything in.
Yeah, I think relationship dynamics, particularly in America, have been destroyed by social media.
Yeah, yeah, it
There's
has.
a lot of problems that we face now, and we can talk about this off too. But a lot of problems that we face now is just because the dynamic of how we interact with people has changed so much. Where now it's like, it used to be. And I had this conversation with my dad because he was talking to me about finding the right one and everything.
Mm-hmm.
I've been single for I've been in and out of relationships, I should say, for the past 30 years or whatever.
Yeah.
And he was like, "Oh, you'll find the right one, everything like that." And I'm like, "Well, Dad, the difference now is when you met Mom and you guys got married and all that. Mom didn't have a 1,000 dudes a day hitting her up on Facebook. You know what I'm saying?
That's big. That's big.
Yeah.
And then for me, like I was like you, I was a little chubby, little tubby. So, until I got my job at the Postal Service, a lot of females weren't really paying me no attention.
Yeah.
So, as I got to make a little bit of braid, make a little bit of change, then some females came into my life. And unfortunately for me, rest in peace to my ex, she killed herself. She shot herself in the head, man, last January. And it took a big effect on me.
Yeah.
And so, but I gave her about 11 years. We had 11 years of a relationship. She was my best friend. And, and my kid's mom and I, we just, for some reason, we just couldn't get it.
Yeah.
And then also, I will, not to bash her or anything, because there's nothing wrong with her.
Yeah.
Shout out my baby moms. But, I just felt as a man, like you said again, I was trying to do this. So if I was working too much, well, you need to be home a little bit more.
Yeah.
And then if I was home a little bit more, then it was, well, we need more money to do this.
Yeah.
And so like you say, we go through this social media phase and nowadays. So, at the end of the day, I found this young lady who was willing to love me for me.
Right.
And, that kind of broke off the dynamic. And again, everybody cheats, not just men, women cheat too.
Oh, yeah.
So, we went through that dynamic. But again, I don't take anything back. I don't take anything for granted, man.
Yeah.
It had to happen.
Is your immediate family, like I know you say your father passed. Is your mother like supportive of what you're doing now?
Oh, my mom is 100% supportive. Like I said, my daughter is 17. And when I had my daughter, like I said, my mother was addicted to drugs then. But once I had my daughter, she came to light and she got clean out. She's almost 18 years clean. So my mom is 100% on board with everything. Man, that's my number one supporter. Shout out, moms. You the one, you the MVP. Yeah, so yeah, she does a thing for me.
That's awesome, man. It's super important to have. I know the nuclear family is, has gone wayside in our current society, which is a bad thing.
Yeah.
I mean, in all communities, but really strongly in the Black community for sure.
For sure, man.
Is that kind of what's driven your mentorship program that you're
Oh
working on?
yeah, definitely. And so again, shout out my mentorship program, Trapped by Community Development Coalition. It started, I want to say maybe back in, I'm gonna say about 2016, 2017. I got with Bobby Gary. Bobby Gary's a former Kershaw County. He was a former Kershaw County representative, and he and I wanted to purchase our park in our community.
Yeah.
And from there, he was like, well, you know what? This is what you got to do. We got to do X, Y, Z and X, Y, Z and X, Y, Z in order to do it. And so from there, I found that, well, you know what? Well, these are all the pillars. So I got 7 pillars that I want to follow up with my coalition and do. And so I started, and those pillars were mental health, physical health, etiquette, financial awareness, community service, political awareness, spiritual, and then mental health. So I was like, well, you know what? We'll have basketball games for the bros,
Right.
Every week. And so for a good little while, I would just post on Facebook, hey, we're at Boykin Park, or hey, we at the City Arena, or hey, we in Nice Hill Park, playing basketball. Just come on out, let's play ball, let's talk, let's politic.
Yeah.
And then it went from there till when I got my call in to do my political stance. Like I said, I'm a former chairman of the Kershaw County Democratic Party.
Right. Got
my job at the United Way of Kershaw County. And so, and also my position on the executive board of Food for the Soul and Concerned Citizens of Kershaw County. So once I got into that, I was like, well, hey, let me keep pushing this narrative forward,
Yeah.
So when I got the guys together, all right, we're playing basketball, but hey, what's going on at home, bro? You good?
Yeah, yeah.
Or, hey, bro, like, you got enough money? Like, you straight? You pay your bills? Or, hey, bro, how your girl doing?
Right.
Like, bro, you sure you good with that belly like that? You know what I'm saying? Like, with your belly, you sure you don't want to do a couple more runs? So, it went into that. It went from being real simple to being that. So, yeah, that's exactly how I got into this mentorship program. And like how we said earlier, a lot of our families are either missing a father or missing a mother.
Yeah.
So it's like, so the mentorship is more or less, hey, let me let you know, I'm from exactly the same place you from, and I can make it. So if I can make it, you can make it.
Right.
I'm just a poor old boy from the tracks, So,
Hey, you're doing fine for yourself now.
Hey, I'm trying, man. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah. So political awareness is an interesting pillar. What does political awareness mean to you?
Man, listen. First and foremost, I want to address the naysayers who think that voting doesn't mean anything. I'm looking at, that's my camera right there.
Right over there. Yep.
I'm looking at my camera. It does mean something.
Yeah.
Stop telling yourself it don't.
Yeah.
Because we have one of the most amazing candidates for governor by the name of Dr. Jermaine Johnson running for governor of South Carolina. He's going to be running the first, he's been one out of 7, I believe, black candidates for governor, Democratic candidates for governor, state of South Carolina history. So it's like, it means a lot. We have to get out here. We have to be active. He's got boots on the ground right now. Our Kershaw County Democratic Party are knocking on doors, giving awareness. We're having a runoff for Republican Senate races next week, starting on Tuesday. It is a very, very important thing because in my community, it's the guys that's getting locked up, drug charges, whatever kind of charge it is, and you wondering why you can't get off. Well, it's because of the way you vote.
Yeah.
You wondering why, my dad ain't coming home. He ain't able to provide. We got to vote for that.
Yeah.
Or why is it that, next month, if you get SNAP benefits, why you aren't able to buy juice or buy candy or buy any sweets or snacks for your child? It's because the way we vote. So it's like, stop thinking it's the big things. Look at the little things, because local politics are way, way more important than the presidentials.
Yeah, that's Jeffrey Graham said that to us before.
Absolutely.
And he's talked about he's actually one of the things I appreciate most about him, because I was at his, I technically still am one of his realtors.
Yeah. Shout out Jeffrey, because that's my classmate, and that's my boy. Anytime I got something, I call him up, and he knows where I'm coming from when it is, and he's going to definitely let you know.
Yeah.
And basically, and again, just tell you a little history about him while you go on. He was one of the youngest mayors in South Carolina at 26, and I was on his campaign with him.
Yeah, he for sure. He's been a huge impact on my life, and one of the things, two things that he taught me was, one, like you said, local politics is more important than national politics, because you can actually drive change from a local perspective.
Absolutely.
National level is it's kind of like a big wild beast that you don't have a whole lot of control over. But the second thing was, and this is something that you probably learned on your own with all the things that you're doing. I actually had to have somebody tell me this. If you're passionate about something and you want to make a change, do it.
Absolutely.
Especially for folks that have like the resources and the connections and stuff, like what are you waiting on? And that actually inspired me to start. My mom worked at the food bank for a while.
Okay.
So I did a food drive, driving a Pack the Pantry event. You know what I mean? So that type of thing is something that I never would have considered doing on my own before he said those words to me.
You right.
So for me, he's looking at my camera. If you have something you're passionate about, do it.
Do it.
That's
Absolutely, man.
That's something I learned from him, and I'll definitely appreciate for.
Because again, I'll give you another little story. Like I said, I never would have thought I would have been the chairman of the Kershaw County Democratic Party. But again, once the George Floyd march happened, and with the turnout that we had, and after I had these meetings, people wondered, like, hey, you know what? We need diversity in our city council. We need diversity in our county councils.
Yeah.
And that's one thing that, whether people think about it or not, these council members want.
Right.
They want to know what you're thinking. But again, and the reason why I am starting this coalition is because being a member of the Concerned Citizens of Kershaw County, being the former chair of the Democratic Party, I was usually not only just the only black man, but I was sometimes the only male, period, in some of these rooms.
Yeah.
And it's like, who else is here to speak with me?
Right.
So, it's like, we need you to get out. And just because I was there in certain occasions, just because I was there, I was nominated.
Yeah.
Or I was chosen to step up and be a leader.
Right.
And good thing I had the capacity. Yeah.
Yeah. How do you feel about so one gap for me, like when I think about political awareness, how do you feel about the way like people are actually being educated on the issues and like exposed to people's policies and things of that nature? Because I mean, one of the biggest things that I have concern with is like when you look at Senate bills being longer than the Bible, these people aren't reading these things, and there's things being snuck through. Like how do you ensure that, or are you involved in that as far as like when you're teaching and mentoring these folks? Like how are you involved in making sure that folks understand the issues and what the actual policies of the people that they're voting for are?
Hey man, you're right. Because I'm cut and dry, and I don't hold no cut cards. If you able to sit out here and memorize your favorite rap song or R&B song, dude, do some research and figure out what these particular candidates stand for.
Right.
And at the end of the day, it takes some time. Yeah. It's not something that you're going to just learn in one day, but you have to take some time. But also the awareness comes from being active.
Yeah.
So for me, it's not the fact that I came into everything knowing everything. It's the fact that, like I said, I went to the meetings.
Yeah, you build those relationships.
Yeah, building those relationships, linking the chains together. Being a chair of the party at the time, I was invited to certain events, invited to be at the Democratic Convention, state convention, the county conventions, other county chairs, politicking with you. And you get to know whose issues are important to them in their communities. Right. Because what a lot of people don't know is for so long, Camden and Kershaw County has been considered a rural area.
Yeah.
But now in the past 4 years after the pandemic, we are now considered to be a bigger city or not rural, but domestic.
Yeah.
So it's like a lot of the things that resources that we were depending on being rural, we don't have those resources anymore.
Right.
A lot of people don't know that.
Yeah.
So when we were rural, we would get more USDA home loan grants. We would have more state SNAP and other benefits that we would get, handed us for being a rural development. Right. But now that we're a bigger population, those things are gone. But again, you would only know that if you were in the rooms, or if you did, or you studied a little bit.
You did your research.
You got to do your research. Yeah.
A lot of folks, especially on social media, are concerned with the pace of our growth for our city, especially with regards to the infrastructure that we have in place.
Yep.
Are you involved in any of that work?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. I am actually I actually just lost a seat to be on the board of disabilities, but now I'm looking to try to see if I can get a seat on planning and zoning.
Okay.
And so the thing about planning and zoning is it is firsthand in our development. And I'll go back, and I hate to say it, but we'll go back to our president, Donald J. Trump, and he mentioned it in one of his speeches. South Carolina is affordable housing.
Yeah.
And what that means is if you look around us, we have so many abandoned homes. Mm-hmm. We have so much abandoned land.
Yeah.
And not only abandoned land, but we have a lot of land where people came from up north, the northern states.
They're coming here.
They had money. They purchased land.
Yeah.
and they go back up, or they would come down here for the winters and go back up during the summers. And so those properties are just left, abandoned. So it's like now, if you got a little bit of cash and you want to make an investment, South Carolina is the place to do it. And so if that comes from President Trump's mouth, you got to know it's the truth. And so again, that's why another thing I encourage a lot of folks to, talk to your older folks in your family. Figure out whether or not, if it's a parcel of land, or if it's a resident, or if it's some type of, land that you can own, or you can possibly, gather for yourself, because there's people that are coming down. Like, I'll give another shout out to Ned Towell. Not a couple of years ago, we had this big development idea that they wanted to put down in the tracks where we had to kind of stop it. It was horses for houses.
Yeah, I remember that.
Yeah, horses for houses. And that was because, this guy, he actually had a person to work for him who was actually Bo Biden.
Wow.
And they wanted to drive this $1 billion development down here in a rural community, raise the taxes. And even in my community where I grew up, so on Gordon Street, I walk down the street and there's 7 senior citizen, ladies who live on that block. And if we would have built that development in that area, you're talking about raising these ladies' taxes from $1,000 a year to almost $5,000 a year just because you wanted to build a development. And so a lot of those things, if we don't know the logistics of it, you don't know. So
people don't consider that.
Yeah. And let's get it, and let's not be twisted again as well. Us growing up in Camden, we always wondered why we don't have a mall. Or the main question I get from a lot of people on Facebook is why don't we have a skating rink, or why they don't build? Well, what we got to remember is building a skating rink or building a restaurant or a gas station, that's a private investment.
Yeah,
that's not something that planning and zoning or the county council or the city council determines.
Yeah,
that's someone coming in with their own money, building something that they can profit from.
Yeah.
And so again, like you said, if we don't go out here and hit these meetings up and figure out what's going on in the city council meetings, which I post on my Facebook page. I post county council meetings on my Facebook page too. So look at my Facebook and go and listen. You'll see, those things they're not determined by the city and the county council.
Yeah.
These are private investors coming into our community using their own dollars to make a profit off of us. And for so many years, we know so many people who, well, I don't want to shop in Camden. I want to go to Charlotte. I want to go to Atlanta. I want to go to Columbia. Well, now that we have the data center in Bethune, and they want to open up another plant in Bethune, now everyone wants to say, no. Well, guess what? People see us. It's an opportunity here in our county.
It is.
And if we don't capitalize off of it, guess what? The whole world is ready to come in and take over 100%. In our own backyard.
And I think, to your point, the private investors, they're not going to invest in a rural town. They're not going to try to, because you're not going to make any money out of that. But the more we grow, the more opportunity there is for those types of investments to actually take root. So I think we're headed the right direction from that perspective.
Yeah.
How does health and wellness tie into your community mission?
Man, health and wellness is the most important. Because again, if we're not in shape, if we're not mentally or physically able,
right,
what can we do?
Yeah. And
like you said, like we said earlier, there's so many of us that are obese.
Yeah.
So many of our children are obese.
Yeah.
President Trump, again, hate to keep shouting his name out, but he keeps pushing our initiative of the physical health and the physical assessment back in schools again, which we used to do the V-sit reach and push-ups and sit-ups in middle school. They didn't do it anymore because, like we said earlier, I hate to say it, but it was the pussification of our youth. We didn't want to push our youth. We didn't want to make them feel different from anyone. We didn't want to make them feel like they were less than. But at the end of the day, now people are starting to see, I have to let my child know you have to compete out here in order to win.
Yeah.
So that's what my children know. Like my son knows, my daughter just got a promotion at her job. She knows you have to compete in order to win.
Yeah.
You can't just not do anything and expect to get a prize. It's not going to happen.
Yeah, for sure. So, and I think what you said kind of ties back to that old phrase, hard times make good men.
Absolutely.
Good men make good times or something. How's it go? Good men make good times make soft men.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
It just kind of
Exactly.
cycles along. I think we're in that hard time section.
Yeah, we're definitely in the hard times, man. Like we said again, just to piggyback off that a little bit more, the health and wellness aspect is more important nowadays because what youth or what young person is going to want to model themselves after you when you can't maintain enough mental and physical awareness for yourself to be
Right.
healthy.
100%.
I can't tell you what to do if I'm not doing it.
Yeah.
Like my dad used to say, don't do as I do as I say do.
Yeah.
But again, I wanted to see him do better.
Yeah,
you know what I'm saying?
right.
So now I know I got to do better and I got to tell you better.
That's a good point, man.
Yeah, man.
I mean, I was in that same mindset with my dad. He just do what I say.
Yeah.
I think and you know, leading by example is a big part of, you know, how people actually can make changes in other folks. And then another thing you mentioned, you were talking about oh man, I lost my train of thought there. There was something else you talked about with influencing youth.
Oh yeah.
It'll come back to me. You got something coming out in 2027. What you working on for next year?
Yeah, the 2027 is, like I said earlier, that's the Track Block Community Development Coalition.
Okay.
Again, we're gonna launch that. And I would be remiss if I don't give one more shout out. Shout out to Miss Sharita Seward Brown for heading me up on another podcast, her CEO Clarity podcast.
Oh yeah, I saw that.
Yeah. So you know, shout out to Miss Sharita. She's awesome. She's been trying to put her stamp down for years. Gold digger chick, if you want to follow her. So yeah, she just wanted to give some clarity to some business owners who may not know which way and direction to go.
Yeah.
Now, like you mentioned earlier, you know, I had the catering company, been major successful with the catering, but now that I'm in the 501c3, the nonprofit reign, I didn't necessarily know how to do that. Now, yeah, even though I had my time at the United Way, I couldn't really get the time to learn, you know, the things that I needed to learn. So with Miss Seward, you know, Miss Seward Brown, you know, she's giving me some insight on how to not only, you know, get profits, but to, you know, to gather my following, some direction and clarity on how to focus on, you know, my 7 pillars, and how to push those pillars.
Right.
And then also, when I get sponsors, like if anything, a Nothing Podcast want to sponsor, or if I got any of these banks or anybody else in the community want to sponsor, to show them what I'm actually doing with their sponsorship dollars,
Right.
and donations. So it's big thing. But again, it all my initiative for next year all goes back to giving back to the community. I want to focus on African American youth and males in general, but not just for them, you know, for anybody. Because again, I don't want to make this seem like a race thing, but it's for anyone who needs to know. Because at the end of the day, like I said, you know, we're not teaching financial literacy to our kids.
Yeah.
You know, I went down to the school the other day and there's 70 kids with $100 book packs,
Right.
$100 book bags on, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Backpacks. And it's like, I heard a story from a friend of mine, and she was like, her daughter was like, well, Mom, I want one of those $100 backpacks.
Yeah.
And she was like, well, baby, I can't afford it.
Yeah.
And so the young girl says, well, maybe you need to work harder.
Oh man.
You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So it's like, where do we get off with our children telling us we need to work harder when we're providing a roof over their head and food on the table and things like that? But again, it's not just about the financial. You know, we forgot to teach people to be well-rounded.
Right.
You know, everyone's forgetting you can't just be great at one thing.
Yeah, for sure.
You know, I always tell myself, especially when I first got my job at the Postal Service, you know, most people will say master of all,
Jack of all trades,
master of none. Well, I would say exactly. I would say I'm the master of all trades and I'm a jackass to most people. So that's what I would say. Because again, you know, I definitely want to be one of those folks that I'm able to tell you a little bit about everything.
Yeah.
And so with those 7 pillars that I mentioned earlier, you know, I've been through that. You know, like I mentioned, you know, I had a close friend of mine kill herself this past year. So I went through seeing a psychiatrist.
Yeah.
Went through a mental health awareness. Physically, we talked about, we had weight loss. We know about dieting and exercise. Etiquette. That's a big thing.
Yeah, for sure.
We see so many cases, and rest in peace, Lacey Peterson cases, or these other cases where men don't know how to treat women.
Yeah.
Being etiquette, political awareness, like we just spoke about.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people think, oh, my vote ain't gonna never count. Well, yeah, it will if you go out and you're active.
Yeah.
So many of these things, and even spiritual awareness. It's not just about going to church every Sunday, because nobody wants to go to church anymore, because everybody think that the pastor and the preacher is stealing.
Yeah.
And why pastor got to have a nice car?
Yeah.
But it's not that. But find your own self, find your own peace. Even if you got to meditate.
Right.
So it's giving people those options and letting them know what it is they need to do for themselves, man.
Yeah, for sure. I like all that. I think the 7 pillars you have are going to develop a strong next generation for sure.
Absolutely.
And I'm sure that's what the goal is.
Absolutely.
I remember what I was getting to when I trailed off there.
Gotcha.
It's kind of irrelevant, but I think part of the reason why especially like Donald Trump and RFK Jr. are trying to get us back into a healthier youth is because they see the impact it's having on the American military.
Absolutely.
What I mean?
Absolutely.
Like we don't have, we used to have the president's fitness test, and they were supposed to get a certain amount of, kids healthy, because you have to have we can't have an unhealthy generation of folks that can't defend our nation. You know what I mean? So, but that's neither here nor there.
And then not only that, hey, you can't defend yourself.
You can't. Yeah, 100%.
I mean, think about it, and then that's why and then I would directly correlate that with the amount of violence we have in our community.
Yeah, for sure.
There's so many guys out there who are quick to pick up a gun.
Yeah,
because they know they can't fight.
Can't fight. Yeah,
you know what I'm saying? I went to title boxing a few times. Like I said, I wrestled in high school.
Yeah.
I'm not saying I can beat everybody's ass, but
you can protect yourself.
I'm gonna protect myself and protect my family.
To kill somebody.
Absolutely. So again, before you pick up that gun, squab it out.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, right.
Nobody doing that.
And then the other thing I thought of when you were talking about the child saying you need to work harder, Mom. There was a Cat Williams bit.
Yes,
you probably know what I'm talking about. But he was talking about his son wanted an Xbox or something like that.
Yeah.
And he was like, now we can get the Xbox, or we can go get the Wii for $99.
And so there we go. Because again, a lot of, and like I said again, and I'm not bashing any single mothers out there.
Yeah.
I love the single mothers. I was raised by a single mother for the majority of my life. But the thing is that we have to be realistic, because what we're doing is we're putting kids back into our society that don't understand the real quality of work.
Yeah,
they don't understand the quality of a hard day's work for an honest day's work for an honest day's pay.
Yeah, and earning what you have.
Absolutely. And so here we go. And now, just like when we're on the highway or we're on the road, you got somebody cut you off on the road because they feel like, oh, I should be in front of them.
Yeah.
Or somebody bump you in a grocery store because, oh, I got to go. I got something I got to do. No, man, it's about, it goes about being a well-rounded individual, having respect.
For sure. All right, we're about an hour in. I got
Cool.
a set of questions that I typically ask at the end.
Okay, let's go.
So what's the best words of wisdom anybody's ever given you?
Oh, man, the best words of wisdom someone's ever given me really is to be myself. Like I said earlier, just be myself. And I know that sounds so surface level, but to just elaborate, what you feel sometimes, and again, we'll go back to a spiritual awakening. What you feel sometimes is not just your thoughts or your conscience. Sometimes it's the voice of God, or the voice of awakening.
Yeah.
So it's like when you have a thought in your mind and you say, hey, this is what I like. This is what I want to do. This is what I want to be. Do it.
Pursue it. Yeah.
Yeah, pursue it. Like I said, I started, Track by Killer Incorporated. It was my rap label. I wanted to rap.
Yeah.
I went to the library. I learned how to mix and master stuff. I sent songs to the Library of Congress. I did it. I wanted to start Earthly Eating. I started Earthly Eating Catering. I sent in my stuff to the Secretary of State office, got it back. I'm a notary public.
Yeah.
Sending paperwork to the Secretary of State, got it back. I'm good.
Yeah.
Even with this new thing, I don't know exactly how it's going to fan out yet, but guess what? I want to do it. It's in my mind. It's in my spirit. I'm going to do it.
Bro, I'm gonna tell you, we're in a world of information where is if you want to try to learn something like, and this kind of I almost brought it back up when you talked about learning the policies and everything, and we talked about the bills being as long as Bibles, man.
Yeah.
Chat GPT and like AI can help assist in those types of things.
Yeah.
It used to be, and we've been in this situation for a while now because you could always use YouTube. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
YouTube taught me how to do many things.
Yeah.
But who's been the biggest influence in your life and why?
All right. The biggest influence in my life, I would have to say my mother is the oldest girl, and I got 5 uncles. And I'll have to say my 5 uncles are my biggest influence because like I explained to you earlier, every summer I would go back and forth from here to Stamford, Connecticut. And my uncles were entrepreneurs and they own businesses. So from there, they just showed me the treasure you can get from out of having a work ethic.
Yeah.
My grandfather, he started the treasure shop. That was in Stamford, Connecticut. He left from down here because at that point in time in the 30s and 40s, you couldn't start a business as an African American unless you had someone white to back you.
Yeah.
So he moved to Connecticut. And when he moved to Connecticut, he would grab old furniture from off the yard, off the side of the road. He would come back, clean it up, sell it. Taught me ingenuity.
Man.
My other uncles, unfortunately, they were considered kingpins by the state of Connecticut, selling drugs, but that showed me how to hustle.
Yeah.
So I always took the bad, mixed it with the good, and used it for my better benefit.
That's cool, man.
Yeah.
Some folks are doing that type of side road flip stuff now as like a business.
Yeah.
And it's not a bad idea. I mean, if you can get stuff for free, put a little bit of elbow grease into it, and then resell it for a profit, that's a good business.
Hey, my grandfather started that in the 60s. He flipped it into a moving company that now my youngest uncle runs, and it's a multi-million-dollar company.
Yeah.
We compete with 2 Men in a Truck and other moving services in the Northeast.
That's cool, man.
Yeah.
If you could change one thing about your past, what would it be?
You know what? I wouldn't change nothing.
That's the right
Wouldn't
answer.
change nothing, man. Wouldn't change nothing because, again, for me, everything was a lesson, and all my lessons weren't losses. They were lessons.
Yeah, right.
So whether it was me going to the Army instead of going to college, because I got football scholarships to Winston-Salem State, Livingstone College. I wanted to play at South Carolina State. But I wanted to be independent because I knew I had drug addicted parents. I wanted to be able to pay for my own college.
Right. Yeah.
So I went to the Army instead.
Yeah.
Even my relationship with my kid's mom, her and I are still good friends. We're great co-parents.
That's good.
We don't hate each other, but so no, I wouldn't change anything, man.
Okay. If you could tell your younger self something, what would that be?
Go to college, then go to the military. Because I would have went into the military as an officer instead of coming in as an NCO.
I got you.
But also, I would have just told my younger self, just don't give up so easy.
Yeah, for sure.
Sometimes, we want everything to be handed to us and be easy. And I know for me personally, I know I gave up a couple of times when things got rough. So I tell myself to keep pushing, man.
Okay. And the last one, when it's all said and done, what do you want to be remembered for?
I want to be remembered as being a person who was a people person. And I always told myself that I'm here for the people. I'm here because of people. All my successes that I've endured throughout my life, it was because of my relationships with folks.
Yeah.
Like we mentioned earlier, my relationship with Jeffrey put me in rooms in politics and business that I haven't been with.
Right.
I have never thought I would be in before. My relationships with just my friends, gave me perspective on how other ways of life might have looked had mine not be the way it was.
Right.
So man, it's just
That's what's up, man.
I'm gonna wrap that up like that.
Nice. A nice little ribbon on it.
For sure. I'm gonna wrap that up like that. Yeah.
Well, I appreciate you coming, Brendan.
And for sure, man. Anytime.
I'll probably have you on again.
Let's do it.
I feel like it was a good conversation. So, and we'll have to once your shoulder's done healing up, we'll play some golf.
Hey, man, we gonna get the range of motion right. But yeah, I gotta swing a few times.
Yeah. Before I let you go, is there any final words of wisdom you want to share with the audience?
Hey, first and foremost, again, catering needs. Check out Earthly Eating Catering. Again, if you want to be down, please, 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 Track Block Community Development Coalition. If you want to mentor the youth, if you want to teach the youth some good things, please shout out to me. Let them know. Also, give a shout out to my girl again, Sharita Seward Brown, CEO of Clarity Podcast, CEO Clarity. And shout out to you, bro, for having me.
I appreciate you. Appreciate
shout
you
out
coming.
to you and everything you got going on, because this is a good thing, man.
Yeah, I appreciate it. I appreciate you coming on. If you guys like, make sure you guys subscribe. That helps the channel grow. Like, comment, subscribe. I will have his social medias down below so you guys can support him and his work. And that's pretty much all I've got. So we'll let you get out of here, man. And thank you again for coming.
Appreciate you, bro. You know what it is. For sure.
Yeah. Well, you guys have a good one. See you later.
Take it.